Irashaimase. Hello and welcome to Fitaurus Kitchen. I'm your host, Chef Fitaurus. It's time once again for Shoot 'em Up Saturday, and on the menu this Saturday we have Strikers 1945 Plus, another awesome Psikyo classic. What kind of taste will it have? Let's get cooking and find out. Today we'll be looking at the Arcade Archive Neo Geo release of Strikers 1945 Plus. Originally starting out as Strikers 1945-2, released in 1995, Psikyo would remake the game 4 years later as Strikers 1945 Plus. The original saw release in arcade, the PlayStation, the Saturn, and then Strikers 1945 Plus would only see release on Neo Geo until 2009 when it would receive a PlayStation Portable release. In 2010 it would also see a port to the iOS. So what kind of gameplay do we have here? Diving into the menu itself, we're allowed to pick between 7 fighters: the Lightning, the Flying Pancake, the Spitfire, the TA-152, the Zero Fighter, the Fiat G56. There's also a secret one, the Ascender, which you can get luckily through random, or you can use a code to ensure that you get it on the random icon. But we'll be playing as the Flying Pancake because who wouldn't want to be a Flying Pancake? Starting the game, the first 4 stages of Strikers 1945 Plus in typical Psikyo fashion are random, so you'll encounter a different order of the first 4 stages, and then the remaining 4 stages of the game are always in a fixed order. So the game itself has us flying our fighter around, and we have a couple options for our attacks. We of course have our base shot. We also have a bomb that we can use, although it's not really much more of a bomb. I feel like it's more of an assist. Using the bomb brings in another plane or set of planes, depending on which fighter you happen to be playing as, that sweeps through the screen, shooting at the enemies and also blocking shots for you. It's actually a really fun take on the bomb, and it's something that I really like about the game. But a feature that I enjoy quite a bit is if you're not using rapid fire on your shot, if you charged up a super shot, you can hold down your fire button and release a super shot that you charge up by dealing damage to enemies on a meter there on your left. So one thing that's interesting to note about Strikers 1945 Plus versus the original version 1945-2 is that it was designed for the Neo Geo. So rather than having a vertical orientation, the game was designed for horizontal screens. So the sidebars you see here are what were present in the original game itself. There's no way to remove those in this port because that was just the way that the version released. So unfortunately, Tate fans will be disappointed with this release. So if we use our super shots, we can have an effective time taking out the enemies, and the bosses are always these great multi-tiered bosses where you've got this like mix of giant old hardware and then like mecha. I really like that kind of lore, really, that you're fighting these bosses with this super equipment, as it were. So one thing I do need to note about this one is, I don't think it's the port itself, rather the original, it's more the original Neo Geo version, but there's slowdown present in the Arcade Archives release of Strikers 1945 Plus, which actually surprised me, as my experience with the game itself largely came from the PSP port, which does not have slowdown. Though as far as which one graphically looks better, I would definitely say this one looks better graphically. But that could just be the limitations of the PSP itself. Still, if you're looking for a version of this title that doesn't have slowdown, then the PSP one would be worth having a look at. Although, that port is very bare bones, whereas this title receives the usual Arcade Archives treatment. You've got the Japanese version, you've got the English version, you also have the high score mode and the caravan mode. And online leaderboards are always fun with this kind of a game, as it's really about moving through the game and setting the best high scores you possibly can. Since it's an arcade title and you can just pop quarters in there however many you want, it's a lot of the challenge to at least finishing the game is removed. Still, it's definitely a great port overall. minus my quibble with the slowdown. And it's not present if we stop firing, so it's definitely something with the abilities of the hardware that we're playing on. So here we are at our next boss. Once again, another great multi-tiered fight. And that's basically what we have here with Strikers 1945 Plus. It's definitely your basic vertical scrolling shoot 'em up, but it just has that great Psikyo polish and feel to it. Definitely a better experience than the last Psikyo title I took the time to review, which was Sengoku Canon, the PSP title in that Sengoku Aces series. That one was definitely a rough one. Anyway, that aside, so minus flavors and plus flavors for Strikers. So really the only minus flavors I have about this release in particular is the slowdown. The game does have a decent difficulty curve, but with the options you have available in the Arcade Archive release, that's less of an issue, and so the difficulty's not anything you really need to worry about. But as far as plus flavors are concerned, I love the way that the super shots work in this game. So you charge them up by dealing damage to enemies, but each fighter has a certain number that they can build up. So such as the Flying Pancake, for example, we can charge up 3 of our super shots. Some of the other fighters can charge up much more, or some only have a couple charges that they can go make. But being able to charge up that super shot over the course of a stage and then unleash them on the boss or save them for parts where you're running across difficult enemy patterns is really satisfying. And then it just has that really classic Psikyo feel. It's just a really solid vertical scrolling shoot 'em up. So, if you're interested in Psikyo titles or good vertical scrollers, then this is one that I can highly recommend you give a try. Alright, that should just about wrap it up for this week's episode of Shoot 'em Up Saturday. As always, I want to thank you so much for coming out and joining me this week, and I look forward to seeing you again next week.